Welcome to the deep dive. You know, for years now, you've probably heard it everywhere
Oh, yeah.
that a computer science degree, well, it's basically a golden ticket, right?
That's the narrative, absolutely.
Get that bachelor's degree, and boom, a high paying, secure job is just sort of waiting for you.
Yeah.
It was the go to major if you wanted to feel set for life, riding that tech wave.
And that perception, it's been incredibly powerful. I mean, it was fueled by decades of really rapid expansion in the tech sector. Demand just seemed limitless.
Right. And the money, well, the financial rewards were, and honestly still are, very attractive.
No question about that.
But lately, you start seeing headlines, you look at the data, and it paints a more complicated picture.
Hmm.
You might have seen reports like one from NDTV back in May 2025 that suddenly highlighted computer science
Hmm.
among the majors with surprisingly high unemployment rates for recent grads.
It definitely makes you stop and think. It challenges that whole guaranteed job idea.
It really does. You scratch your head and wonder, how can a field that's so critical, I mean, it drives everything, a field promising such high future earnings, how can it be struggling to absorb its newest talent?
That's the million-dollar question,
Yeah.
isn't it? What is really happening on the ground for these graduates? Is the market just totally saturated?
Hmm.
Or are the skills changing faster than universities can keep up? Maybe both.
Exactly. So that's our mission today on this deep dive. We want to get past those splashy headlines and really understand the nuanced reality of the U.S. computer science job market for new grads right now.
And we've gathered quite a bit to work with. We're looking at hard statistics, numbers from places like the Federal Reserve Bank of New York,
Yep.
but also
So
combining that with direct feedback, the stories, the anecdotes from recent graduates who are actually out there trying to navigate this.
And we're looking at job posting trends too, trying to see where things are heading.
And we're here to guide you through all of this. Our goal is to help you understand what's really important in all this data, what's driving these trends, and maybe most importantly, what does this all mean for you if you're thinking about or maybe already pursuing a career in CS?
Yeah, we want to give you a comprehensive picture. Look, there are definitely challenges, but there are still opportunities too. It's just different. So maybe you're a student trying to pick a major, or a parent advising your kid.
Or maybe you're thinking about switching careers yourself, or you're just curious about what's happening in such a major field.
Whatever your reason for tuning in, this deep dive is designed to hopefully bring some clarity.
Okay, so where do we start? Let's really dig into the numbers first. What does the current statistical landscape actually look like?
All right, let's do it. We've got data here straight from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the FRBNY. It's based on 2023 census info, looking specifically at recent college grads,
Right.
folks aged 22 to 27. And honestly, the figures are pretty striking when you hold them up against an old golden ticket idea. They found that recent computer science graduates faced an unemployment rate of 6.1%.
1%, okay?
And get this, for those with a computer engineering degree, the rate was even higher, 7.5%.
Wow. 7.5 for computer engineering. Well, it's quite a bit higher than you might expect.
It really is. What's particularly noteworthy here is how these numbers put these majors fields we always thought of as like guaranteed employment zones right up there among those with significant unemployment levels for young graduates.
It definitely busts the myth of near zero unemployment for CS grads.
Absolutely. And just for context, let's look at the overall picture. The unemployment rate for all recent college graduates across every major in that 22-27 age group was 5.8% in the first quarter of 2025.
Okay, so CS at 6.1% and Comp Ing at 7.5% are actually above the average for all recent grads.
Exactly. And that overall average itself, the 5.8%, has actually ticked up a bit since early 2024 when it was 4.4%. So the entry-level market in general seems a bit tighter, but CS and Comp Eng being above that average, that's a key finding right off the bat.
And the FRBNY data is really useful here because they give us these quarterly updates on unemployment and on underemployment, but then they do a deeper dive annually using the American Community Survey for the wage data and the major specific stuff.
Right. Now, beyond just unemployment, which means actively looking and not finding a job, there's this other layer, underemployment.
Ah, yes, the people working jobs that don't actually need their degree.
Precisely. And the 2023 FRBNY data gives us numbers here too. For recent CS grads, the underemployment rate was 16.5%.
Okay, 16.5%.
For computer engineering grads, it was 17.0%. And for a related field, information systems and management, it was quite a bit higher, 28.5%.
Hmm. Now, how does that compare to the overall underemployment rate for all recent grads?
Well, that's where it gets interesting again. The overall underemployment rate for all recent college grads has actually climbed quite a bit, hitting 41.2% in Q1 2025.
41%. So wait, while CS grads face challenges with 16.5% underemployment, they're still much less likely to be underemployed than the average recent grad across all fields.
Exactly. It's a crucial piece of nuance. It suggests that while getting that first degree relevant job is tough, if they do land a job, it's more likely to actually require their degree compared to, say, an average liberal arts grad or someone from another field.
So the degree itself is valued in the workplace. The problem is the initial access. Getting your foot in the door for a job that uses those skills?
That seems to be the crux of it.
Yeah.
And just to really hammer home how this data shifts perceptions, let's compare those CS and comping unemployment rates to some other majors from that same 2023 data.
This should be interesting.
Prepare yourself. Majors like nutrition sciences had an unemployment rate for recent grads of just 0.4%.
0.4%.
Yeah.
Okay, very low.
Construction services, around 1.0%. But here's the kicker. Even fields that often get stereotyped as, maybe leading to less certain job paths.
Like humanities.
Yeah. Art history grads had an unemployment rate of 3.0% in 2023. Philosophy grads, 3.2%.
Wait, let me get this straight. Computer engineering grads, with their 7.5% unemployment rate in 2023, had a higher rate of unemployment than art history grads at 3.0% or philosophy grads at 3.2%.
That's what the 2023 data shows. It completely flips the script on the common assumption that a practical STEM degree like compeng automatically means an easier path to immediate employment compared to humanities.
That is genuinely startling. It really challenges deeply ingrained beliefs about the value of different degrees in the immediate job market.
Now, to be fair, CS wasn't at the absolute bottom of the list. Some majors did have higher unemployment. Anthropology was 9.4%. Physics was 7.8%. So CS isn't like the worst off by any means.
Right. It's not an extreme outlier at the very bottom, but its position among majors with these notable unemployment levels is definitely the surprising part, given its reputation.
Okay, but here's where the paradox really hits you, and where you see that fundamental long-term value of the degree snap back into focus. Despite these unemployment struggles, the CS and computer engineering graduates who do land those jobs, they command some of the absolute highest early career median wages out there. We're talking $80,000 a year, median, right out of college for both majors.
80,000. Okay, so that's the payoff if you get in.
Exactly. Compare that to the majors we just mentioned with lower unemployment. Art history grads, 3.0% unemployment. Their median early wage was $45,000.
Big difference.
Philosophy grads, 3.2% unemployment, median wage $48,000. Even information systems and management, which had unemployment kind of similar to CS, their median early wage was lower at $65,000. And the overall median for all recent grads in 2023, about $60,000.
So CS and Comp Eng are pulling in $20,000 more per year at the median starting salary compared to the average recent grad. That's significant.
Hugely significant. And it gets even better long term. Mid-career median wage jump up to around $115,000 for CS and $122,000 for computer engineering.
Wow. Okay, so what this really tells us is the inherent economic value of the skills learned in these degrees is still incredibly high. The earning potential is massive.
Right.
But like you said, the unemployment and underemployment numbers show that the barrier to entry, getting that first job to unlock that potential, seems to be much higher right now than it used to be.
Okay.
And maybe higher than in some other fields that have lower starting pay, but perhaps easier initial access.
And you have to think that huge potential reward, that $80 starting salary, that's probably a big part of what's fueled the massive surge in students going into CS in the first place.
Absolutely. Which then, ironically, intensifies the competition for those entry-level spots.
Right.
It becomes a bit of a feedback loop.
So how does this square with the long-term outlook? Because you always hear tech jobs are the future.
Right. And that's still largely true based on projections.
Yep.
The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS, they continue to forecast very strong growth for computer and IT occupations overall. Their projection is for 12% growth between 2023 and 2033.
Which is much faster than the average for all jobs.
Much faster. So the fundamental long-term demand for people with tech skills isn't just vanishing, it's still projected to be very strong over the next decade.
Okay, so if long-term demand is strong, but near-term entry is tough.
It really points to this idea of a bottleneck, specifically at the entry level.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that the skills aren't needed overall. It's that getting that first job, breaking into the field as a new graduate, has become significantly more difficult right now.
And that bottleneck is likely caused by a mix of things: the current economy, maybe a correction in the tech industry itself after years of insane growth.
And definitely that huge increase in the supply of graduates we talked about, plus maybe other factors we need to unpack.
Okay, so we've seen this really complex picture from the stats.
Mhm.
Amazing earning potential, but surprisingly high unemployment and underemployment compared to what people thought, and maybe even compared to some other fields right now. Let's dig into why. What's causing this disconnect?
There are several big factors kind of converging right now. And one of those obvious ones, as we've touched on, is just the sheer number of people flooding into the field. Market saturation.
Yeah, it feels like for the last 10 years, CS has been pushed as the smart, secure path. Everyone was told, go into tech.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just traditional four-year degree programs swelling, although they definitely grew massively. You also had the explosion of coding boot camps, all the online courses, certificates.
So many different ways to get some level of tech skills now.
Exactly. It vastly expanded the pool of people with foundational tech knowledge. You see comments all over places like Reddit saying things like, the tech market is beyond oversaturated. It captures that feeling of surprise, even shock, that so many apparently well-qualified people are really struggling to land that first job.
So the supply side, the number of people wanting these jobs has just exploded.
It really has.
Yeah.
And the argument is that this supply, especially of people with foundational knowledge, has grown much, much faster than the number of true entry-level positions roles designed with the expectation that you're hiring someone fresh who needs significant training and ramp-up time.
Companies might be hesitant to invest that time right now.
Especially if they're facing economic uncertainty or need people who can contribute immediately. They might naturally lean towards candidates who already have some practical experience under their belt. And that creates that bottleneck we saw in the data, a huge pool of new grads, all vying for a more limited set of genuinely entry-level openings.
Which ties right into the second major factor, the broader economic headwinds and what's been happening specifically in the tech sector itself, the layoffs.
Oh, definitely. The past couple of years, 2023 into 2024, saw a significant wave of job cuts in tech. The numbers are pretty stark. Challenger, Gray, and Christmas reported over 65,000 tech cuts by mid-2024. Layoffs.fyi, which tracks this stuff meticulously, counted over 136,000 tech employees laid off by August 2024. And CompTIA estimated over 211,000 tech jobs were cut in 2023 alone.
That is a massive number of experienced tech workers suddenly back on the job market.
It is. And a lot of this is seen as a correction, maybe some right-sizing, after the hiring frenzy during the pandemic tech boom when demand for digital everything surged. Now, with things like rising interest rates, inflation, companies are tightening budgets, maybe freezing hiring.
And this directly impacts new grads.
Hugely. Signal Fire's 2025 report put some hard numbers on it. Hiring for new grads in big tech, down 25% from 2023 and over 50% compared to 2019 before the pandemic.
Over 50% down in big tech hiring for new grads since 2019. That's huge.
It is. In startups, often a place new grads look. Similar story. Hiring down 11% from 2023 and over 30% from 2019 levels.
So fewer entry-level doors opening at those key places.
Fewer doors, yes. And here's the crucial consequence. Those layoffs didn't just reduce openings. They flooded the market with experienced talent, people with proven track records who need less training.
And in an uncertain economy, employers might see them as a safer bet.
Exactly. They're often more attractive to companies looking to minimize risk and get immediate productivity. So these experienced folks end up competing for a wider range of roles, including some that might have otherwise gone to junior hires or new grads.
Creating that crowding out effect we talked about, experienced people taking roles that new grads might have hoped for.
Precisely. It makes it exponentially harder for someone without professional experience to get that first foothold and start building their own track record.
Okay, factor 3, and this one feels like it's accelerating really fast. The impact of artificial intelligence, the AI effect.
Yeah, AI is definitely reshaping things. Its capabilities are advancing incredibly quickly, and companies are adopting it more and more.
And how is that affecting entry-level jobs specifically?
Well, AI tools are getting pretty good at handling some of the more routine, foundational tasks that were often given to junior staff. Think basic code generation, finding simple bugs, writing standard test cases, maybe some data entry or initial background research.
Stuff that takes time, but maybe doesn't require deep strategic thinking.
Right. And we're seeing this reflected in surveys. That Spark Admissions survey from April 2025 It found that half of the C-suite executives they asked said that adopting AI had led them to reduce the number of entry-level positions in their companies.
50%, that's significant.
It is. And Challenger, Gray, and Christmas even noted that over 15,000 job cuts they tracked in 2024 were chalked up to technological updates, which is often seen as a bit of a euphemism for AI or automation taking over roles.
So are employers actively replacing humans with AI for some tasks?
There's definitely that perspective out there. An HR consultant named Brian Driscoll was quoted suggesting some employers see it as a cost-saving measure, replacing human labor with AI for certain functions. And you see discussions online, like on Hacker News, linking AI's impact with offshoring, maybe using AI to enhance productivity of workers in lower-cost regions instead of hiring domestically.
Hmm. So even if AI is creating new specialized jobs, maybe in AI development itself,
It might simultaneously be automating away some of the tasks that used to form the bulk of entry-level work.
which effectively raises the bar for what a new grad needs to be able to do on day one.
Exactly. It's not enough just to execute basic instructions anymore. The expectation shifts. Graduates now need to show they can work with AI tools, use them to be more productive, maybe focus on the more complex problem-solving or creative aspects AI can't do, or even be skilled in verifying and debugging AI-generated output. The baseline requirement for entry level seems to be rising.
And this leads directly into the fourth big factor we need to talk about, this idea of a skills gap, or maybe a mismatch between what graduates offer and what employers are looking for right now.
This theme comes up again and again. Brian Driscoll, the HR consultant, mentioned that some students have unrealistic expectations about the job market, what a degree guarantees. He also noted something interesting, that in this hyper-competitive market, sometimes the perceived prestige of your university or your overall background can seem to outweigh specific skills on paper.
Which suggests things like how you present yourself, your communication skills, your perceived potential. Those softer skills are becoming more critical and getting noticed.
Absolutely. And you hear echoes of this online. Comments on Reddit sometimes describe grads as unhireable, not because they lack coding ability entirely, but maybe due to a perceived lack of practical, real-world application skills, or, very often, weaknesses in soft skills, communication, teamwork, initiative.
There's also that idea of qualification saturation. With so many people having degrees or boot camp certs, the credential itself doesn't make you stand out as much.
Right. And some online chatter even raises concerns about whether heavy reliance on AI tools during coursework might mean some grads haven't truly mastered the fundamentals themselves.
That Spark admissions survey really nailed the skills gap from the executive perspective. When they asked C-suite leaders what skills were most lacking in recent grads, what topped the list?
It wasn't technical skills primarily. It was the soft skills. Verbal communication and presentation abilities were number one, cited by 51% of executives,
Wow.
followed closely by problem solving and critical thinking at 50%, then leadership and initiative at 44%, and written communication at 42%.
So the biggest perceived gaps are in communication, thinking critically, and taking initiative.
Exactly. It strongly suggests that while universities might be doing a decent job teaching the core technical stuff, maybe they aren't focusing enough on integrating these crucial professional and interpersonal skills that employers desperately need for people to function effectively in a team, solve real problems, and adapt.
And this perceived lack of soft skills may be combined with graduates having unrealistic salary expectations or being too rigid about wanting only certain cool jobs or companies.
It all contributes to this mismatch between the available talent pool and the actual openings companies are trying to fill. It creates friction in the hiring process.
Okay, so we've laid out the stats and we've explored these big contributing factors, the sheer number of grads, the economic shifts and layoffs, the rise of AI, and the skills or expectations gap. But what does this actually feel like for someone going through it? This is where the stories get really powerful. Let's talk about the lived experience.
Yeah, listening to recent CS graduates, reading their accounts online, the dominant feeling is just how incredibly difficult and often demoralizing the job search is right now.
I've seen the numbers people throw out, sending hundreds, even thousands of applications. It sounds exhausting.
The scale is staggering, and the frustration is immense. You have graduates with strong GPAs, impressive personal projects they poured hours into, they've ground away practicing leak code problems for interviews.
Yeah. They've done everything they were told to do.
Pretty much. And yet they're facing months, sometimes more than a year, of unemployment or working jobs, completely unrelated to their field, just to pay the bills.
That phrase we heard earlier, the tech market is beyond oversaturated, seems to capture it.
It really does. And you see comparisons online, people on Reddit saying, this market feels tougher for entry-level software engineers than even during the Great Recession.
Hmm.
That tells you something about the level of difficulty. And it's not just new grads feeling the pinch. Remember that anecdote about the senior UX designer with years of experience?
Applied to over 500 jobs.
Exactly. When even experienced professionals are facing that kind of struggle, you can imagine how much harder it is for someone trying to get their very first break.
It turns the job search into this relentless numbers game. You just have to keep firing off applications and hope something sticks, which requires incredible persistence and resilience.
Absolutely. Resilience against constant rejection, or often just silence, never hearing back. It takes a toll on confidence, on finances, on mental well-being. It's a really tough way to start a career.
And we know those tech layoffs are a direct part of this pain for new grads. They're competing against those experienced folks.
Correctly. New graduates are suddenly up against not just their peers, but this large pool of laid-off developers who need less training, have proven track records.
And look like a safer bet to risk-averse companies in a shaky economy.
Precisely. Those experienced hires are just more attractive right now. So you end up with what one online discussion called a backlog of junior mid-level developers with CS degrees, all fighting for a shrinking pool of spots.
And didn't some discussions mention offshoring or jobs just not being refilled?
Yeah, that comes up too on places like Hacker News. The idea that companies might be shifting certain roles overseas, perhaps enhanced by AI, or simply deciding not to backfill positions when people leave, further squeezing the number of domestic entry-level openings.
It really creates that intense crowding out effect, making it incredibly difficult for new grads to get the experience everyone seems to demand.
It's a classic catch-22. Need experience to get a job, need a job to get experience, and right now, that cycle feels particularly hard to break into.
So, given this incredibly tough environment, what are people actually doing that seems to work? What strategies are helping graduates break through?
Several things keep coming up as absolutely essential. Number one, without a doubt, is gaining practical experience before you graduate, especially through internships.
Internships seem more critical than ever.
They really do. The data backs it up strongly. Paid internships seem particularly valuable. One report found they make you 32% more likely to get a job offer than unpaid ones. Another study noted about 7 out of 10 employers end up offering full-time positions to their interns.
And remember that Spark survey, among the executives whose companies were reducing entry-level roles because of AI.
An overwhelming 86% of them still said internships or relevant work experience were very important or essential for new grads.
That's incredibly telling. Even as some tasks get automated, the value of real-world experience gained via internships is sky high.
It's seen as the crucial bridge. Beyond formal internships, building a really strong portfolio of personal projects is key. And not just generic tutorial follow-alongs. We're talking unique projects that tackle real problems, show off initiative, and demonstrate practical skills.
I remember reading about one grad who totally revamped their resume, focused on quantifying achievements, used stronger action verbs, highlighted leadership, even used AI tools to make it concise, and saw a big jump in callbacks.
Exactly. It's about effectively showcasing the value you bring, even if it's from coursework or personal projects. Networking also comes up constantly as vital.
Making connections.
Yeah, using LinkedIn, going to virtual or local meetups, talking to people. Referrals are often the key to getting your resume actually looked at, especially at smaller companies or startups that might not have huge HR departments screening thousands of applications.
And flexibility seems to be a recurring theme, too.
Definitely. Being willing to relocate is often necessary. Opportunities might be stronger in different cities or regions. And being flexible about the type of first role. Maybe it's not software development right away.
Like IT support or testing.
Right. Considering roles like that just to get your foot in the door, gain some professional tech experience, build your network within a company, and avoid a long resume gap. The core message from all these experiences is clear. The degree is the foundation, but it's not enough anymore. You need demonstrable achievements, internships, projects, plus strategic networking and flexibility to land that first job.
This tough market must be causing a lot of anxiety for current students and recent grads about what comes next. What are their main worries?
There's definitely a significant concern about what some call an increasing skill barrier. If it's this hard to break in now, what will it be like in a few years as AI gets even more capable and integrated? Will the baseline expectations for even junior roles just keep rising?
That's a scary thought. And what about the people graduating right now who can't find a relevant job quickly? What happens to them long term?
That's a huge question people are asking online. If you spend a year, maybe two, underemployed or working in a totally different field, can you realistically pivot back into the tech industry later? Or does that period effectively push you onto a different career path permanently? That Signal Fire report saying the training wheels are gone and grads need alternative ways to get experience really taps into that fear of being left behind.
And there's a real risk there, isn't there? If you're not using your technical skills, they can get rusty pretty fast.
Absolutely. It could create a vicious cycle. Long unemployment leads to skill atrophy, which makes it even harder to get hired later. It's a potential loss for the individual, obviously, but also a potential loss of talent for the industry.
Wow. Hearing these stories really brings the statistics to life. It makes you understand the human side of these trends.
Okay, so if this is the reality, what skills do graduates actually need to focus on developing and highlighting to overcome these hurdles? Let's dive into the evolving skill demands. All right, the message from employers and job postings is becoming clearer, and at the very top of the list, almost impossible to ignore now, is the AI imperative.
AI skills are becoming table stakes.
Increasingly so. The data shows a huge surge in demand for AI and machine learning expertise. Some reports mention a five-fold increase just between 2023 and 2024.
And employers are actively looking for it.
Definitely. They're more likely to interview candidates who can demonstrate what's being called AI capital, and they're often willing to pay a premium for those skills. The World Economic Forum projects a 40% rise in demand for ML specialists globally. And early in 2024, estimates suggested about 1 in 4 U.S. tech job postings specifically mentioned needing AI skills.
What kind of roles are we talking about?
High-demand roles are shifting towards AML engineers, data scientists who specialize in machine learning. Big tech companies are apparently doubling down on hiring in these areas.
And Signal Fire mentioned the rise of the generalist engineer for 2025. What does that entail?
It's not necessarily about being a deep AI researcher. It's more about being a software engineer who can comfortably use AI tools in their daily work, build applications that incorporate AI features, and this is crucial, have the ability to debug and critically evaluate the code or output generated by AI models. It's about practical application and integration, not just theory.
Are there specific AML tool or libraries that keep coming up?
Yes, proficiency with the ecosystem, especially built around Python, is key. Frameworks like TensorFlow, PyTorch, scikit-learn, Keras for building models, essential data handling libraries like Pandas and NumPy, and increasingly, familiarity with things like Hugging Face transformers for working with large language models, or gradient boosting libraries like XGBoost and LightGBM for certain types of machine learning tasks. These are the tools of the trade.
Okay, so AML is huge. But does that mean the traditional core CS skills are less important now?
Not at all. Those foundational skills are still absolutely essential. They're the bedrock everything else is built on.
Like programming languages.
Exactly. You still need strong proficiency. Python remains incredibly dominant, versatile for AI, data, web scripting. JavaScript is king for front-end web development, especially with modern frameworks. Java and C# are still staples in large enterprise environments. And newer languages like Go or Rust are gaining ground for performance-sensitive systems work.
And web development frameworks, React, Angular, Vue.
Still critical for front-end. And back-end frameworks like Django or Flask in Python, or others depending on the language stack, remain important.
Cloud computing skills seem non-negotiable too. AWS, Azure, GCP.
Absolutely indispensable. Almost everything runs in the cloud now. Familiarity with at least one major platform is expected. Getting certifications like an AWS Certified Solutions Architect or Azure Administrator Associate can be a good way to formally demonstrate that knowledge.
What about cybersecurity?
Demand there is consistently growing. As systems get more complex and interconnected, and with potential new threats maybe even amplified by AI, security knowledge is becoming more important for all developers, not just specialists.
And data skills. SQL, Tableau, Power BI.
Still fundamental. SQL for databases is almost universally required. Tools for data visualization like Tableau or Power BI are valuable. And using Python or R for deeper data analysis remains a core skill set in many roles.
Plus, DevOps seems increasingly integrated into development.
Understanding the principles and tools of DevOps CI/CD pipelines with Jenkins or GitHub Actions, containerization with Docker and Kubernetes, infrastructure as code with Terraform is really valuable for streamlining development and deployment in modern teams. And of course, solid understanding of databases, both SQL like PostgreSQL or MySQL and NoSQL like MongoDB, is foundational.
Okay, so you need the strong core tech skills, you need the emerging AI and cloud skills. But let's come back to what those executives highlighted as the biggest gap: soft skills.
Right. It's fascinating that this is where executives see the most significant deficiencies. Remember, it was communication, verbal, written, presentation, topping the list.
Followed by critical thinking, problem solving, leadership initiative.
Exactly. And this ties back to that point about prestige sometimes mattering, how you present yourself, how clearly you articulate your ideas, how well you collaborate. These all depend heavily on soft skills.
It feels like maybe the technical skills are seen as more teachable on the job, perhaps.
That could be part of it. Or maybe technical skills are easier to assess in an interview with coding challenges. But qualities like adaptability, critical thinking when faced with ambiguity, taking initiative to solve problems proactively, collaborating effectively within a diverse team, these are harder to teach and harder to measure, but employers know they are absolutely essential for success beyond just writing code.
And because they're perceived as lacking in the graduate pool, demonstrating them becomes a huge differentiator.
A massive differentiator. Especially in roles like that generalist engineer, using AI tools, you need critical thinking to evaluate the AI's output, communication to explain complex systems, collaboration to integrate it effectively. Soft skills are the glue holding the technical expertise together in a real-world context.
Okay, one last piece on demands. How do things like university prestige and actual work experience, like internships, factor into this equation now?
They definitely play a role, especially for that critical first job. That Spark survey showed over half of executives still consider university prestige important or critical, and a chunk, 42%, even have preferred hiring lists from certain universities.
So the name on the degree still opens doors.
It seems it can help get you initial attention, yes. But the online chatter from grads adds important nuance. That prestige factor tends to diminish pretty quickly once you actually have some professional experience on your resume. Skills and accomplishments start speaking louder than the school name after that first job.
But the practical experience part, that seems almost non-negotiable at this point.
It really does. Internships are framed as basically essential. The data showing how many interns get full-time offers, especially paid interns, is compelling. And again, that 86% of executives cutting entry-level AI roles still demanding internship experience speaks volumes.
And beyond internships, the portfolio matters.
Hugely. Employers want proof of hands-on ability, evidence you can build things and solve problems. Signalfire even advises grads to look at alternative paths if internships are scarce. Boot camps focused on portfolio projects, contributing to open source, freelance gigs, creating ambitious personal projects, anything to demonstrate practical application.
So the takeaway is, in this cautious, high expectation market, the degree is necessary, but the proof of skill through practical experience, internships, projects, is becoming the essential validator, maybe even outweighing the university name for many roles.
I think that's a fair assessment. You need the foundation, but you absolutely need to demonstrate you can apply it effectively, ideally with those strong soft skills layered on top. That's the combination employers are looking for now.
Okay, the demands are clear, the skills landscape is shifting dramatically. What does this mean for how we actually prepare people? How does CS education need to evolve to align with these industry needs?
Well, the pace of change, especially with AI, puts immense pressure on educational institutions. It's tough for academic programs to keep up.
That Stanford HAI AI Index report really drove that home, right? Industry is racing ahead with AI models and applications. Investment is huge.
While education is trying to figure out how to even integrate the fundamentals, there's a clear need to embed AML concepts, data literacy, and crucially, discussions around AI ethics deeply into the standard curriculum.
But is that happening fast enough? The Stanford report mentioned K-12 teachers feeling unequipped to teach AI, even though they think it's important.
And that challenge almost certainly extends to higher education. Curriculum updates in universities often happen on slower cycles than industry sprints. Programs designed just 3 or 4 years ago might already be lagging behind on the latest tools, advanced AI techniques, or the really complex ethical debates students will face immediately in the workplace.
And if that generalist engineer concept is the future, students need practical training in things like prompt engineering, evaluating AI outputs, using AI development tools responsibly.
Exactly. It's not just theory anymore. And this connects right back to that skills gap feedback from executives.
Right, where they said soft skills were the biggest lack, while technical skills were mostly okay.
It suggests that while universities might be covering the core technical ground, they perhaps need to more intentionally integrate the development of communication, critical thinking, teamwork, those professional competencies throughout the entire program, not just in one-off courses.
And that experience paradox, needing experience for an entry-level job, highlights the need for more applied learning, right? More projects, more co-ops, more connections to real-world problems.
Definitely. Students need opportunities to practice applying their knowledge in contexts that simulate professional work environments.
There's also that online discussion about standardization. Do employers perceive a difference between a CS degree from MIT versus a smaller, less-known college?
That perception certainly exists. While accreditation bodies like ABIT provide a baseline standard for program quality, the resources, faculty expertise, industry connections, and ultimately the perceived value can differ significantly between institutions.
But despite all these challenges with the pipeline and the entry point, we saw the salary data. Once you're in, the degree is clearly highly valued.
Undeniably, the high median salaries prove the market values the skills and knowledge associated with the degree if you can get that first relevant job. The bottleneck is access.
So the call to action for education seems clear. It's not just about producing coders anymore.
It really can't be. It has to be about cultivating well-rounded professionals, people who can think critically, communicate effectively, collaborate, adapt, and apply their technical skills ethically and innovatively. The future value of the CS degree really depends on broadening that focus.
The educational pipeline needs work, but what about the job market itself? Where are the actual job postings shifting?
We saw the Signal Fire data showing those sharp drops in new grad hiring at big tech and startups compared to pre-pandemic levels.
And the CSCM article confirming a general cooling in programmer job postings in some places.
But, and this is a really important, but the sources also emphasize that demand remains strong outside of those traditional high-profile tech companies.
You mean in other industries?
Exactly. Think finance, banking, healthcare, retail, manufacturing, government. All these sectors are undergoing massive digital transformation. They need tech talent badly to build new systems, analyze data, improve operations, you name it.
So it's less a collapse and more a redistribution. The jobs are moving into different kinds of companies.
That seems to be a major part of the story. It's not that tech skills aren't needed. They're needed everywhere now. And layered on top of that is the huge surge we talked about in job postings, specifically asking for generative AI skills.
So the type of roles is shifting too, towards AI development and implementation.
Definitely. Demand for people who can build, manage, and leverage AI is booming. So the crucial takeaway for job seekers is you have to broaden your search beyond just the FAANG companies or the hot startups. The opportunities are spreading out.
Okay, so where are these growth areas geographically, and what specific sectors are hot?
Well, the high-demand tech skill areas we keep mentioning are AML, cybersecurity, data science, and cloud computing. Within those, specific industries like healthcare and retail were noted for showing strong growth in AI-related job postings.
And location-wise, are the traditional hubs still dominant?
The traditional hubs, the Bay Area, Seattle, New York, are seeing some adjustments, maybe some consolidation, but other areas are showing significant growth and opportunity. Washington, D.C. was highlighted as a top tech city, especially for cybersecurity and IT, with lots of jobs, including entry-level ones. And interesting.
Baltimore and Atlanta were also mentioned as strong, growing tech hubs that are generally more affordable than the coastal giants.
And affordability is a huge factor for new grads.
Absolutely. While places like San Jose, San Francisco, and Seattle might still offer the absolute highest salaries on paper, the cost of living can eat that up quickly. Opportunities in these other growing, more affordable cities are becoming very attractive.
Plus, the rise of remote work, even with some companies pushing for return to office, probably still offers more geographic flexibility than before.
Right. So if graduates are flexible on location and maybe the specific industry they start in, the opportunities might be more accessible than they first appear if you only look at big tech in California.
That flexibility seems key to navigating the current landscape successfully.
Okay, let's pull this all together. We've seen the tough market, the evolving skills, the need for education to adapt, the shifting job locations. What's the overall outlook, and what's the bottom line advice for people trying to navigate this future?
Okay, outlook first. Short-term, thinking about the next year or two, 2025, maybe 2026, the market for new CS grads is likely to stay very competitive.
The bottleneck continues.
Pretty much. You've got the ongoing tech adjustments, economic uncertainty still lingering, plus that large supply of graduates still coming through. That experience paradox probably isn't going away overnight. And AI's impact, both automating some tasks and driving demand for AI skills, will just keep growing.
But longer term, 3, 5 years out or more.
the fundamental demand picture looks much brighter. That BLS projection for 12% growth in computer and IT jobs over the decade is strong. Some specific roles, like research scientists, are projected even higher. As the economy finds its footing and companies really figure out how to integrate AI, hiring for skilled tech folks should pick up.
But with a catch?
The catch, suggested by the sources, is that entry-level roles might be permanently changed. The baseline expectations for skills, for practical experience, might just be higher now. It might be a new normal.
So the easy golden ticket era, where just having the degree was enough to guarantee a great job right away, that seems to be on pause, maybe indefinitely. It requires a more proactive, skilled approach now.
That's the strong implication. It's not automatic anymore. So what does that mean in terms of concrete, actionable advice for students?
Okay, let's summarize the practical stuff. First, skills. Focus hard on those high-demand areas: AML, data science, cybersecurity, cloud. Nail the core languages like Python, JavaScript, and key frameworks. But don't neglect soft skills. Communication, critical thinking, teamwork, adaptability, cultivate these actively. And get AI literate. Learn to use the tools, build with them, and, importantly, debug what they produce.
Second, experience and networking are non-negotiable. Prioritize internships, co-ops, significant projects. Build a portfolio that shows what you can do. Network like crazy: LinkedIn, events, informational interviews, maybe contribute to open source.
Third, job search strategy. Brace yourself for a potentially long and high-volume search. Persistence is vital. Tailor every application meticulously. Practice for technical interviews, coding challenges, system design, behavioral questions.
And be flexible. On location, on the initial role type. Maybe look outside traditional tech. Consider IT support or testing just to get experience. Apply quickly when you see relevant postings.
And finally, manage expectations. This market is tougher. The first job might not be your dream job at your dream company, but it's a crucial stepping stone. Getting that initial experience is the primary goal.
And there are also takeaways for the universities, right? They need to keep curricula modern, embedding AI, data, cyber, cloud, ethics.
They need to emphasize soft skill development throughout the program, not just as an afterthought.
Expand experiential learning, more co-ops, better capstones, stronger internship support. Provide realistic career counseling.
And make sure faculties are equipped to teach the latest stuff, especially AI.
And maybe even implications for policymakers thinking about workforce retraining, strengthening the STEM pipeline with critical thinking, supporting apprenticeships, tracking the trends.
It's a multifaceted challenge requiring action on many levels.
Definitely.
So, wrapping this all up, what's the core takeaway from our deep dive today?
I think the main point is that the CS job market for new graduates, well, it's just not that simple golden ticket anymore. It's a landscape that's actively transforming.
Yeah, it's undeniably challenging right now. We saw the reasons: market saturation, the economy, tech layoffs, AI disruption, that skills and experience gap. It's all contributing to those higher unemployment and underemployment numbers we discussed.
And this is the important reframe. It's not that the field is collapsing or the degree is worthless. Far from it. The fundamental value and the long-term demand are still incredibly high.
It's just that success now requires a different approach, a more proactive, strategic, multi-skilled approach.
Exactly. It highlights that massive shift towards needing specific, in-demand technical skills like AI, cloud, cyber, data, but also, just as critically, needing strong soft skills and demonstrable practical experience from things like internships and projects.
So the message is really about adaptability, continuous learning, because things will keep changing, and using every resource you have, from your education to your network to your own initiative.
Precisely. And maybe that leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to chew on.
Okay, let's hear it.
Given everything we've discussed, the skills gap, especially around practical experience and soft skills, the way AI is changing entry-level tasks, the sheer competitiveness, is the traditional four-year university degree sort of on its own still the most effective or even a sufficient pathway to prepare graduates for this new reality of the entry-level tech market? Or are we going to see alternative routes, things like really intensive project-focused boot camps, maybe more structured apprenticeships like in other trades, or even demonstrating significant contributions to major open source projects become increasingly dominant, maybe even necessary, ways to bridge that gap between learning the concepts and actually landing that first job and succeeding in the industry?
That's a really interesting question about the future of tech education and entry. Definitely something to ponder.
Food for thought.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complex and evolving world of computer science employment.